Thank you so much for joining in on today's session. I am excited to announce to you that our speaker for this session is Pat Calhoun, who is the founder and chief executive officer at Espressive. So, with that being said, I will hand it over to Pat and let him take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Katie. So thanks everyone for joining me today. I'm Pat Calhoun. I'm the CEO and founder of Espressive. And today we're going to talk about digital transformation and how that can significantly help you with your help desk. So let's talk a little bit about some of the history that's been going on, in 2020. And, obviously 2020 and the pandemic created some unexpected events for most of us. And I think for a lot of employees, this is feeling like they're still in month 14 of 2020. Good news is there is light at the end of the tunnel, but what we are seeing is that the work from home is probably not something that's going to be going away. There's quite a few folks that, according to a study by McKinsey, that are saying that they would actually prefer to work from home moving forward. But one of the things that we've actually seen is it certainly has had a very positive impact on productivity, but one of the challenges that it's created is people now have a lot more distractions. And so the time that they have available for work is fragmented. They have kids on Zoom, they have whatever it happens to be at home that's causing all these distractions. And so what we've actually heard from our customers and what we've actually seen in talking to analysts is that when people need help, they need help when they have time to get help. And so that's been one of the big challenges that a lot of help desks have out there, service desks, is how do you make sure that you're providing help when it's needed? Now, a lot of you have actually implemented a number of different digital transformation technologies to really help embrace this work from home effort. This image here is something I've seen a couple of times on LinkedIn. It certainly is true, I think, for most people that is participating in this meeting today, that COVID and the work from home has actually forced this to happen. So while this is true, it has actually had some very positive impact to your employees, but it's also led to a lot of challenges within the organization. Employees are now leveraging a number of different technologies that they didn't have to before. I've talked to customers where the majority of their employees didn't even know what a VPN was, and they were actually working off a desktop. And these are people who now have to work from home. They actually have to start leveraging Zoom. They have to start leveraging collaboration tools like Slack or Teams or Jabber. And all of that has to be done in a world where they can no longer shoulder tap their neighbor and ask them for help. So now they're basically forced to go down the formal method of asking and raising their hand and asking for help, which is to call the help desk, to email the help desk, or if they're good citizens, perhaps go to the service portal to try to see if there's some help available there for them. But that has been one of the big challenges that employees are seeing now. And what we've actually heard from our customers as well, and from our prospects, is that through COVID, because of the work from home and the fact that people can no longer rely on the traditional methods of asking their neighbor, people are now seeing a 35% increase in overall tickets. So 35% increase in tickets coming into a help desk, who, by the way, the agents are going through the exact same challenges that lady was on the prior slide. They have their own set of distractions. So all of this has kind of created a bit of a perfect storm. But according to Gartner, it takes on average 3 days and 10 hours for a ticket to get closed. So for someone to call in or send an email or go to a portal, create a ticket, it creates a tier 1 ticket. That ticket then has to go through some level of categorization, has to get assigned to a team. Sometimes there's some level of ping pong because nobody can quite agree on who really owns that ticket, until it finally lands somewhere where it gets resolved 3 days and 10 hours later. That's a very long time when you're sitting at home and you're trying to get to work. Now, why is that? Well, there's a number of different reasons, but one of them is the fact that the help desk is a very challenging place to work. And I actually started my career in the help desk, so I know how this is. For most people in the help desk, this is a stepping stone into their career. Very few people really want to work in the help desk as a lifelong engagement. They're really looking at this as a way to get into an organization and move up or move sideways or find another job somewhere else. But according to Gartner, the average attrition rate on the help desk is 41%. What that means is that 41% of your team is leaving, which is a lot of tribal knowledge leaving out the front door. The challenge for you is that you're funding this team to deliver a high quality experience for your employees, you want to make sure that they're delivering the best experience possible so that your employees can get back to work. But if 41% of those people are leaving, and it takes on average about a month for these individuals to get trained up, it's very difficult to get a great experience. And so how do you actually solve that problem? How can you get to a point where everybody gets immediate answers to their questions? That has been one of the biggest challenges. And the reason why, moving forward, help desk cannot simply be something that's managed purely by people. You have to leverage technology. But how much can technology really help? Well, again, going back to Gartner, on average, the first call resolution rate for most organizations is somewhere in kind of the mid 70s. So what is a first call resolution? That's something that a tier 1 agent can resolve. It doesn't have to get escalated to a tier 2 team or to a tier 3. It can be anything from a how do I do something to a password reset. Sometimes, depending on some organizations, it can actually include software provisioning or et cetera. Some basic troubleshooting. An agent can walk through a run book and ask a series of questions to go in and perhaps correct a VPN problem, what have you. Those are the types of things that we've actually seen are first call resolution rates are the art of the possible from an automation standpoint. So if you take your first call resolution rates and you were to embed those inside a virtual agent, you could get significant return on your investment. And so the question is, what if you could reduce your cost by eliminating 70% of your help desk tickets, 70%? And that's absolutely possible. Now, how do you get there from here? AI is complex, machine learning is complex. There's a lot of work that needs to happen to create these chatbots and these virtual agents. But that's the reason why I believe that there are tools out there that are really designed to go specifically after this problem that allow you to get up and running in just a few weeks with immediate ROI on the first week, on the first day that you've actually gone live. Now, that's a hard saving, and that's very easy to compute. But one of our customers, Caterpillar, who was on a webinar with us just recently, and they talked about the fact that while they could compute that number and they could show their CIO exactly how much savings they had, the real savings is the fact that employees got immediate help when they needed it. In the past, when people called and there were people drop calls because the wait times were too long or what have you, people could literally not come back for 24 hours. Imagine the productivity hit when people cannot get to work. So let me just provide a couple examples of real use cases where customers have actually leveraged AI and virtual agents to automate their help desk. PSEG, if you're living in New Jersey, you're certainly familiar with them. They are the largest gas and electric company in the US in terms of households served. The CIO was facing a very interesting challenge. He had to go figure out how to essentially reduce cost, and he was looking at an outsourced contract that was really not working for them. He decided to bring the help desk function back in-house, but he'd already shed the cost from his budget. So how could he possibly do that? He did it through AI. He decided to fully virtualize his tier 1, turned off the phones, basically told people you can email, you can go to a portal, all these different approaches that you can ask for help, but everything went to a virtual agent. Of course, there was a team behind that to help for things that could not be handled through tier 1 and through a virtual agent, excuse me. What they saw on their first week that they went live, 62% of all interactions were fully resolved with no human intervention, 62%. That is a huge number. They are super successful, and they've essentially eliminated their tier 1 help desk. I'll give you another example. Dexcom. You'll know Dexcom if you have anybody in your family that has diabetes. They built continuous glucose monitoring devices. They had a phenomenal ad at Super Bowl. If you saw it, that was great. They decided to go with our virtual agents, we call it Barista, to essentially help them both in IT as well as in HR. And the problem that they were trying to solve is they grew, in 2020, they grew 30%. They couldn't even hire enough people in their help desk to be able to handle that growth in the organization and maintain their SLAs and their MTTRs. So they decided that they were going to go with a virtual agent and leverage automation. Today, 96% of all their emails are being fully automated, intercepted, responded to, if not, create a ticket behind the scenes. They're seeing 64% deflection, so 64% reduction in tickets across IT and HR. That's a phenomenal number. Now, they did something really interesting. They were trying to drive an environment where people just went to Barista, which is a virtual agent, first and foremost. And so they really wanted to come up with a way where they could start driving more adoption. So they decided to implement what they call Ask Barista Friday. On Fridays, they would turn off the phones to the help desk. When you call the help desk, they would tell you that today was Friday, please go to Barista. And if Barista can't answer the question, there's a human to help you out. It will hand you off seamlessly to a human, and you will get the help that you need. Over only 3 weeks, 3 Fridays, they saw a 236% increase in interactions. And today, only 7% of their tickets actually are generated through the phone. So those 3 weeks alone were enough to create awareness. And now this has become the main channel for most employees. So phenomenal success story across IT and HR. And the last one that I'm going to share with you is Solar Turbines, which is part of Caterpillar. In March of last year, when the work from home mandate hit and everybody ended up having to essentially go home and work, they were 40% fewer agents than they were the prior year. They had a 300% increase in IT touch points, and they were able to survive it with 40% fewer agents. And they only were able to do it because they had AI and a virtual agent. Our virtual agent ended up handling 99 agent days worth of work. So 99 agent days worth of tickets were essentially handled, fully automated, with no human involvement. So these are 3 examples of situations where customers have been very successful in leveraging AI. So going back to this really complex story I talked about earlier, where somebody has to go figure out, where do I go? And you know that wherever you go, it's going to take a really long time to have your problem solved. The art of the possible is to essentially be able to go to any channel that you want, ask it any question, and get an answer or get connected to a human. That is the art of the possible. Now, on the left-hand side, this is only showing one particular help desk. Imagine if you were to replicate that 19 times or 20 times, depending on how many help desks you have inside your organization. One for IT, one for HR, one for facilities, one for manufacturing, one for payroll, one for travel desk. It's very complex for a user to navigate all those different teams and the different approaches to go and get help. Instead, you have one place to go. So what I'm going to do right now is we're going to launch a poll. So Katie, if you're with me, we're going to be launching a poll. There she is.
So for everyone who is joining in on this session, the way to answer this poll is in this session, when you clicked into this to view it, just like when you wrote in the chat to ask the question, there's a tab next to it. It says poll, and you'll see the question that is exactly on this slide screen, and you can check off any that apply, and then we will discuss the answers.
Awesome, very good. And I think I did not mention this at the beginning, but I'll have some time at the end, so I would love to engage with some of you. So if you have questions, please do make sure that you're going into the Q&A box and put them in there. Very good. Somebody's not seen the poll, so okay. Katie, I think that people are actually in the Zoom session, so they're not actually seeing the poll itself.
Oh, yes. So if you click back onto your other screen where you clicked join the portal, I'm sorry, getting caught up here. When you clicked into Zoom to view this session, you will see that there's a chat feature, and next to that, you'll see the poll. So you just have to click into your old screen.
Awesome.
And they said, gotcha, thank you. Of course, no problem.
I'll just give you a few seconds to go over there. Cool. All right. So you can still go and finish the poll while I go on. One of the things that I wanted to talk about is what should you be looking for when you're looking at a virtual agent? Or in essence, maybe a different way to ask the question is, what is the art of the possible when it comes to automation? What can be automated? And the way that we look at it is really three different categories. The first one is kind of the how-tos, right? How do I add a customer to a Teams meeting? How do I set up my background in Zoom? How do I submit a PO in SAP? How do I record my PTO in Workday? So all of those different types of questions are things that generally don't require automation. They have an answer. And so one of the big challenges that we've actually seen now that we've been at this for over 4.5 years is that humans are just inherently unpredictable in how they're going to ask a question. If you think of something like a password reset, there's probably 100,000 different ways of asking that question. And understanding 100,000 different ways of that question is really the science here. But sometimes, while people can be extremely verbose, there's many times where people are being extremely vague. So if somebody said VPN, well, if you really want to be able to deflect those types of interactions, you need to have a platform that allows you to build an engagement with the employee, ask them a series of questions to be able to get to a better understanding of what their problem is. So you're not just throwing 1,000 articles at them and hoping that they're going to read one of them. Frankly, they only read one, they only want to read the answer. They don't even want to read an article. They just want the answer. And that is really the experience that you want to deliver. But where does that answer come from? In some areas, it actually comes from some of you, right? You actually have a lot of your internal processes, maybe your own proprietary tools, things that you've done that's very customized on Office 365 or something else. And so you've built some of these KBs. They could be hosted in your service management tool like ServiceNow or Cherwell or Ivanti or what have you, or Jira. They could be in Confluence. They could be sitting in SharePoint. It could be virtually anywhere. So that's a good source for getting answers for your employees. But the second place is what we call curated content. Now, why would your team want to go and rebuild a bunch of knowledge and information for commercially available apps when every organization is using the exact same thing? You really want to have a platform that has a lot of those answers already pre-built, so your team can really focus on things that are very unique to your organization. That is what we call the FAQ content. The second component is really around automation. So automation can be anything from, help me reset my password. Please create an account for me. Maybe you're an Okta customer and you just want to have an Okta tile show up. So, there's a whole provisioning process behind the scenes that could be fully automated. Maybe you want to have a meeting room booked. Maybe you want to have a mailing list created. Those are all things that can be fully automated. But sometimes some of those things require approval, right? Somebody should not be permitted to be added to the e-staff mailing list just because they go to a virtual agent and they ask for it. Or maybe if they want a software account provisioned, maybe it's something that actually requires approval because there's a cost associated with it. So all of this automation has to take into account the fact that there's a lot of compliance involved. So how do you create a platform that allows you to automate things as well as get approvals before automations happen? And if you've already built a lot of these workflows or automations in your service management platform, or maybe some other workflow tool, you want to make sure that you can seamlessly integrate into that. So you're maximizing the value of the platform by leveraging all the automations you've built. What we've actually seen is that there isn't normally a lack of automations. What there's a lack of is awareness of your employees of how to find those automations. And that's where a virtual agent can come in. We can essentially connect people to tools they don't even know. The last part is what we call smart resolution. So if somebody is complaining about perhaps a slow laptop, let's go run a diagnostic. Let's go figure out what's running on your laptop. Maybe the disk is out of space. Maybe you have a process that's running wild. Let's go and identify the root cause of that particular issue. And there are times when you just have to create a ticket. And when you want to create a ticket, let's make sure that we're not just creating generic tier 1 tickets that's going to require a human to go and recategorize and reroute. Let's make sure that we're leveraging machine learning to properly understand whether this is something that should go directly to a tier 2 and which tier 2. Let's eliminate ping pongs. Let's make sure that that the system is aware of your organization and how to create the best ticket to minimize the level of effort on the back end, which is going to minimize your MTTR. So those are the 3 buckets that we see are things that are very important when you're looking for a virtual agent. If you think about the art of the possible, I talked about automated provisioning earlier. This is an example, right? It should be something as simple as being able to say, hey, I need access to Acrobat. And the virtual agent should be able to engage with you and ask you a series of questions, and then perhaps even go off and get some level of approval required without a lot of effort on behalf of the user. This is all it should take. It should take me 20 seconds to ask to have Acrobat Pro installed on my device. Katie, if you don't mind coming back, can you just give us a quick update on what the polling results look like?
Absolutely. So it says 24% answered that they upgraded ITSM portal. 14% said offering tier 1 support in Teams/Slack. 10% built a virtual agent in-house. 10% deployed an off-the-shelf virtual agent. 33% still said they're investigating options, and 10% said none of the above.
Interesting. Okay, those are great. Thank you, and thanks everybody for sharing those insights. I spent prior to this, I spent time at ServiceNow. I was running all products at ServiceNow, and one of the really interesting things that we found as we conducted a study to go and really understand the average adoption of a portal. And it turns out, and this has actually also been substantiated by Gartner, who did their own independent study, the average adoption of the portal across the industry is actually less than 14%, which means that 85+% of people are still going to email, they're still going to phone calls. We are now seeing a much higher increase in adoption of Teams and Slack, which is phenomenal. And I think that they're great channels to really leverage as a way for people to raise their hand. So we're definitely seeing a big increase there. So let me just talk maybe one slide here about Espressive, and then we're going to go into Q&A in just a moment here. But what is it about Espressive that has really led people to want to leverage our platform, our virtual agent, which we call Barista? And it really comes into 3 categories. The first one is really around our deflection rates. And our deflection rates are the highest in the industry, and there's a technical reason for it. It's something that we call the employee language cloud, which is today understands over 1.7 billion different things. It's just phenomenal, the amount of content that's actually been created. And if I were to use an analogy on why and how it's actually gotten better, I will use Alexa, I'll use Google Home, maybe Siri. And if you're a consumer of one of those consumer virtual agents, you'll know that they've been getting better and better with time. The reason why they get better with time is they have data. And the data comes from millions of consumers using it on a daily basis, and an army of computational linguists and data scientists behind the scenes that are basically working on that data. And we have recreated something like that for the enterprise, which is how we got to 1.7 billion things that we understand. So there's the understanding of the human language, but there's also the fact that we have an omni-channel capability. So if people are sending emails to askit@acme.com, or they're picking up the phone, or they're going to Slack, they're going to Teams, they're going to your intranet, they're going to the portal, wherever it is that they go, we view that as an opportunity to deflect. We have an omni-channel capability. And so the combination of our accuracy and our adoption rates is what has led, omni-channel is what has led our customers to experience somewhere between 85 to 90% adoption. The second piece is really around the fact that we go across the enterprise. So while we certainly start mostly in IT, about 70% of our customers are using us across many different departments. HR is very common, facilities, payroll, finance. We're seeing legal now. We're seeing sales operations. So those are all teams that are taking in inbound requests, very routine inbound requests day in, day out, that you can essentially free up through automation with one single place to go. And then the last piece is the fact that for most organizations, change management is the #1 problem. IT is phenomenal at selecting technology. IT is great at deploying technology. Where IT has failed in the past is getting adoption. So what we have done is we've partnered with our customers where during the go live process, part of the team that works on the go live is a marketing team. We have the customer success team hooking into your systems and doing all the stuff that's needed to drive deflection. And we're basically driving an awareness campaign inside your organization using your terminology, your branding, your culture to make sure that we're driving the right level of awareness and understanding inside your employees so that it actually drives up adoption, as well as gamification. And that is how we've actually been very successful. So Katie, I think we're down to 4 minutes now. And so
Yeah.
I'm going to open it up to Q&A.
I was just going to interrupt and say we have less than
Yeah.
5 minutes remaining. So if anyone has any questions, you can write it in either chat and I can read them aloud directly to Pat. I'll give everyone a moment. So Pat, you did mention enterprise support. What percentage of your customers have implemented your virtual agent beyond IT, and what was their primary motivation?
Yeah, as I said earlier, it's about 70%. What we are seeing now is CIOs are starting to get a little bit worried about what I call chatbot soup. Every tool has a chatbot. Every department is coming up with a chatbot. Every sub-department, every team within a department is actually looking at a chatbot. You get to a point where there's so many chatbots, people can't even figure out how to navigate the chatbots in the organization, which is kind of leading you to that original spaghetti chart that I had earlier. So what we are now seeing is that CIOs are kind of taking the stance where they're saying, I actually want to drive the strategy for a virtual agent inside my organization. As I mentioned, HR is generally the first team to follow. We're seeing a very tight collaboration between IT and HR. But now we're actually seeing payroll and finance, teams like, we're actually working on a deployment right now where a team is constantly answering questions around purchase requests and POs and so on, because nobody wants to go to their particular tool. And so that's actually being deployed. So 70% HR, very, very common, normally the first one to follow, and then facilities and finance being the next two.
You have another question. It said, any plans to extend this to the contact center?
There are, as a smaller company, we're only 4.5 years old. I actually found through my last startup, which we ended up selling to Cisco, that focus is really important. And so we've taken on a pretty challenging job already of going after the internal employee. Our technology can absolutely support it. It's really just a question of priorities. So we are seeing customers coming to us now and saying, hey, could you help me with my outbound customer support? The answer is yes, we can. But right now, we really want to focus on where we believe that we're just doing phenomenal, which is the inbound customer success, employee support, excuse me.
I'm going to come back on here. Anyone has another about 10 seconds before we get kicked out and this has to wrap up. But if you have any questions for Pat or his team, feel free to message them on our platform. You have the ability to chat them. And thank you all for listening and participating in both the poll and the questions. And Pat, this is a wonderful session, so thank you.
Great. Thank you, all of you, for joining me today. Looking forward to connecting with all of you.